Hi, I'm Brenda Kersner. I'm the co-founder of DevOps Day LA here at Scale for the last 10 years. I'm also the senior manager of project management for NordstromRack.com and Nordstrom's off-price business.
So, John and Bryna. So Bryna has been, she's been through the first clinic this morning. John has no idea what he's in store for here. So we put them on the spot. We can ask them the hard questions. How often do you go into interview situations and you're really curious about what the person on the other side of the table is thinking, but you can't ask, like, how good do you think I am? How high of an offer do you think I can ask for? You want to ask them, right? It's not going to work very well in that situation. Well, there's our sitting ducks right there. And here's the thing about RaiseMe. I believe in disagreements. I am a contrarian hiring manager. Every company I've worked for has ended up changing its practices one way or another as a result of successfully hiring people on my teams. Okay, we do things a little bit differently. And smile, getting a picture taken. Okay, so, and I believe disagreeing is important because you're in a situation where you're receiving mentoring. Everybody is fully individual. Not only, there's no good advice that applies to everybody in a room. You're lucky if it applies to even half the people in the room. It could be the greatest advice in the world. And the other thing is every situation is different. Every job is different. Every hiring manager is different. Every person's role that they might take with a particular position would be different. So there is no right and wrong. What you need to do in developing your career path is talk to as many people as possible who you believe will have good advice. They're going to disagree, and this is good for you. Hearing contrasting opinions will eventually help you arrive at what your own answer is, because things will start to resonate for you. So you'll find that three of us today will not be giving answers that agree with each other, because it's not helpful for you to hear the same thing 3 times. Interviews and negotiations. Oops. So about us, this workshop. So what this workshop is perspectives from both sides of the table. You'll be hearing, you've got your own perspective and then you have the hiring manager's perspective. We'll give you actionable advice on what you can do in interviews. Like when you walk out of here, I want you to have ideas. Hey, I'm doing this in my next interview, or I'm doing this to prepare for my next interview. Okay, and next time I get an offer letter, I'm doing these things, okay? And I can give clarifications on total compensation packages. Does anybody have an offer right now that they are considering, or multiple offers that they're considering? So that's why we put it last. We have one person. Okay, so we'll do that, and if you're willing to share that information. If not, we can do it privately. But this can be so helpful to people. If not, and someone's interested, I can make up hypotheticals. Okay, what this workshop isn't. Okay, this is not the answer to what job is. No one here is going to say take that job. Some people come and they say, hey, I got this offer, how does it sound? We can tell you what we think sounds like a good match about it, but we can't make that decision for you. Also, like I said, no piece of advice you get is gospel. It's not true, it's not false, it's just one opinion, okay? So I want to start you out by showing you how much you don't know. The hiring manager's process is a very complex process. So when you come into the interview, I want you to be able to put yourself a little bit in the mind of the person on the other side of the table, just to help you. The interview is all about communication. Okay. So we have, do we have any hiring managers in the room? 1, 2, okay, a couple hiring managers. Okay, so, all right, we're gonna keep our eye on you, and you're gonna help us with this. Okay, so the way the process works when a hiring manager needs to hire somebody is there's some kind of, it starts this far back. Whether it's a tiny company or a giant corporation, there's some kind of workload impact. They either can't get something done because they don't have enough people, or they can't get something done because they don't have the right skill set, or people in the right location, etc. Okay? So then they have to write a justification. Now, or it's a verbal justification. At a smaller company, this is less formal. Someone's still got to talk to the CEO. I've been there. Okay? At a bigger company, you're going through a much more elaborate HR process. Then there's sourcing. Whether it's you doing it because you're working for a tiny startup, or whether it's an HR department doing it, somebody's going to look at resumes. Somebody's going to post a job. Somebody's going to go to a career event and say, we need candidates, okay? Then you're going to do a resume analysis, which means you're going to read at the resumes and you're going to set aside the ones you think might fit, okay? And then you're going to do screenings. You're going to pick up the phone and you're going to call these people and look for counter indicators. So when I do phone screenings, I want to find out you really don't want to commute from San Diego? Okay, I understand. I'll keep your resume for some other time. Okay, the salary's really, really far out of what we can offer. That's okay. Good resumes are always worth keeping, but there are sometimes counter indicators. In fact, most of the ones in front of you will have some kind of counter indicator, and you'll winnow it down to just the ones where there isn't any big question that's answered in the negative. Okay. And then once you get through all the phone screenings, you'll have a very small stack of candidates who you've gotten to know a little bit now because you've spoken to them on the phone, or your HR department has, in theory. And you've gone through their resume. You've answered all of the questions that would be complete non-starter situations. And then you do your interviews. Are we done? Oh, no. Now we're going to rank the candidates after we do this. Okay. There's so much that isn't said on resumes that sometimes this ranking will completely contradict the previous ranking you had coming out of phone screenings. And now you both know each other, right? Now you know what the candidate's looking for, you know how good of a match they are, they know what your expectations are, now you can start negotiating and make your first offer. And negotiation offer is an iterative process, it doesn't have to be, and I want to encourage you to make it an iterative process so that you're comfortable with it. Okay? So that's the hiring manager's process. Now here's the job hunter's process, and this is why I start with that slide. Because here's your process. What's the first step? You write a resume, right? So what's the purpose of a resume? Get a phone call. Pardon? So it's meant to be compelling, to get noticed, right? Okay, so the number one purpose of a resume is to get a call back. Okay, the second purpose of a resume is to serve as an agenda or table of contents for your job interview, to make sure that there's certain things that you remember to cover. Okay? This is an important point because a lot of people write a resume they're really proud of, that's really accurate, this great book report that looks beautiful. If you're not getting calls back, what do you need to do? No matter how good your resume is in your mind, it's not working for you. Okay? So, call back. Phone screening works, you get an interview. Purpose of the interview is to enter into a very well understood negotiation. Okay, that means you know what they're looking for because you've asked all the questions you need to ask. They know what you need. Okay, and you can both determine how good of a match it is. Okay, and you've talked dollars, but salary is only one kind of compensation. And then there can be an offer or multiple offers. Okay, when there's multiple negotiating offer process, you're converging on a set of circumstances, not just a salary, a set of circumstances. Okay, so that's our introduction. Now this is just about interviews. And I put this up here, and this makes every so we have one hiring manager that is not quite so tickled, but every hiring manager, when I do the clinic for just managers, they laugh. Because this is exactly how we feel about writing job descriptions and doing interview after interview. Nobody enjoys this. You know, it's something you have to do as a leader. You have to do team building. We would all rather be getting work done. So we tend to come to this process a little bit grouchy, and we take it a little perfunctory. And you will notice this. Has anybody ever read a job posting that looked so boring your eyes crossed? Or 6 of them from the same company that sounded exactly the same, but somebody just changed one word or something? Okay, so what you're seeing is people that don't love the process. And they're not doing an excellent job. It makes it hard for you to know what they're asking for. So, Ms. Bryna, can you talk to me a little bit about how you feel about interviews?
How I feel about interviews?
Mm-hmm. And when you need to interview somebody, how would you go about preparing for it?
You mean the way that most people I see prepare for interviews as hiring managers? Okay, so on my calendar, my incredibly packed calendar, is 3 interviews. You got 30-minute interviews, 3 of them peppered through my day. If I'm lucky, I took the time to read the read through the resumes before I actually walked in the room. I've also been walking down the hall reading the resume for the very first time. I'm also printing off copies of the paper resume I have in my hand because I don't even have time to reach into Workday and find the resume and reprint it for the other people who need to be in the same interview with me and are going to interview these people, or who are going to be the interviewees for the rest of the day. Maybe the recruiter, the one recruiter wasn't out sick and I actually got emailed the agenda of who was going to meet with this person. Or even better, I might even know what area I'm supposed to be interviewing, area of interest I'm supposed to be interviewing the first person for. So if there's like 5 people that are going to interview them, I might actually know which section I have. And then I have to walk in, I have to put on my very best smile, because I believe that if you get dressed and you show up at an interview, you deserve my time. You deserve me to be present. You deserve me to forget about all of the other meetings that I was in and all of the other work that's waiting on my desk and all of the other people who are waiting to talk to me. Yeah, and I try to get it my best.
Thank you. So did she miss anything big there, John?
Well, an important disclaimer is I'm not a hiring manager.
Understood.
And I work for a large company that has lots of lawyers, and the interview process is so structured that we're literally given a packet that includes a resume, so we don't have to walk down the hallway trying to find a printer and get it. But we were given a packet with it, and we were given a list of what questions we can ask. We can't go free form.
Yeah. There's a lot of illegal questions they have to avoid.
Well, first to keep people from asking legal questions. Hey, how old are you?
Yeah. Tell me about your kids. Yeah. Oh, yes.
All the stupid things that
Yep.
people do during interviews.
Yep.
Right? So I always say in my class, my syllabus is a list of everything a student has done, and now I had to make a list to tell you not to do that. and the resume process where I work is similar to that. So I, as an interviewer, don't have a lot of flexibility in what I can do because I want to make sure every candidate was asked the same question and it's pulled and it's basically evaluated evenly. So some good things coming out of that, but it does take away some spontaneity, your ability to drill down and follow stuff. But since I have a microphone, quite literally, I will say that when I've done interviews, I have seen the most basic mistakes made. I have seen people show up late. I have seen people have typos on their resume. You know, Word has a spell check feature, and it's just a killer. And I was biased for this person because they were in the Navy, and they were coming out, and I wanted to help them. And I'm like, you're not really helping me help you. So I think that that's something to take into consideration that when you go to a large, one of the big name companies. Another important point is our interviews are panels, which I hated as a candidate.
Yeah, but they're very useful from a manager's perspective.
Rather
Yes.
than have them walking around from person to person.
Well, and
Right.
you don't want to ask the same question, answer the same questions over and over and over
Yeah.
again, right? If you get 5 people in a room on a panel, you can answer the question one time instead of answering the question every single interview.
Yeah, but it does raise the pressure. You won't necessarily get the best out of a candidate that way.
You don't feel like you have time to take a breath because as soon as you're done with one, another person is.
So here we go. Shall I disagree with them? Sounds like two really thorough answers, right? And they're right. I mean, I've seen those situations. I've worked in those situations. Not quite as bad as John's, but I've worked in those situations. So let's disagree with them. What can we do to prepare for a job? This is my slide that I give in my manager class. Oh, look at all these places that we can look to see what the candidates are reading about us and what their questions might be. So you as candidates, you should know this is what I'm telling managers to look at. Glassdoor, Kununu, Facebook, LinkedIn, Pesa, Indeed, Blind, Hire. All these all these sources are out there. They're all free. And especially LinkedIn, it's great to plunder there. There's just so much good information out there. You can actually find the person, if you're clever enough, find the person you're replacing at a company by looking for the right LinkedIn profile. There can be great insight to what certifications everybody has on the team and what colleges they tend to come out of. Things you don't know, but you can find out before you go into the interview. So, oh, these slides will be available. I see everybody always wants to take pictures of this one. Anyway, so, and what engineering managers value. So here we're putting you in the mind of the engineering manager again. What are they looking for? Okay. Go ahead.
I have two questions. One, in interviews, what is the etiquette about? Sorry.
Oh, actually, we're going to run out of time if we walk back and forth. So the folks out there in internet land just don't get to hear it as well. Sorry. Go ahead.
What is the etiquette about bringing, if you were being interviewed, what's the etiquette about bringing your laptop out? Like,
So yeah, that's probably a good question. So the answer is going to be yes.
What was the question, Lori?
Whether or not you can have a laptop open during an interview. Yeah, so the answer is yes. For anything like that, it absolutely is going to be dependent on the situation. And you have to be prepared to walk into an interview with nothing but your wits. So if you feel like you have to go into an interview with a laptop, I think we need to do more preparation, to be honest. It's not that you can't do it or there'll be something. I don't know circumstances where it's encouraged, but you definitely need to be so comfortable in your own skin, so ready to talk about yourself and your experience that you don't need props. Spectrum of experience. So here's what hiring managers want that are trying to fill engineering roles. They want to know that you have the technical skills that they're looking for. That's kind of basic. It's also the simplest thing to address. There's usually a block on someone's resume that says, yes, I know JavaScript programming. Done, ding, check that box. Now what, right? Well, they want to know your spectrum of experience. Have you worked in the Hollywood industry? Are you familiar with the medical industry practices? Have you been a junior on a team? Have you been in a senior role? Do you understand how to delegate tasks, even though you're not a boss, right? How robust are you under pressure? This is especially true with operations positions, right? When there's an outage, you want cool heads. You want people that communicate, that work in teams, that understand very disciplined process and procedure. How many of you are sysadmins or SREs or ops people? Okay, so on your resume, do you mention that you like that kind of work? That you work well under pressure? That you have disciplined, okay? So if you want that kind of job again, these are the things that those hiring managers need to answer. Now, you can wait for the interview to answer it and try to remember, or you can just put it on your resume and it's right there. Okay? There's no reason not to put it on your resume. We just need to find a way to say it. Clear communication. Go ahead.
How do you put something that's qualitative on a resume?
You work on the language until you can say it concisely and it conveys exactly what you want to convey. So I mean, the answer is yes, right? We just work at it until it sounds right. Never exaggerate on a resume and say what you need to say. If you can tell them it in person, you can write it down. Okay? We just have to work at it. Sometimes you need a little bit of help from a mentor, or you see an example resume, you go, oh, I like the way they said that. Okay? Just more ideas. Showing your resume to people, getting different people's opinions, things you can, even, the great thing about disagreeing with people is it gives you an opinion to push away from. You can say, wow, I hate the way they said that. I hate that the guy's using too many adjectives. It's not my style, whatever it is. It gives you something to push away from. That also can just motivate you and move you forward, right? It can be what you need. So the answer to that kind of question is yes. Not that I'm trying to avoid it. And creative problem solving. So here's another thing. Does your resume demonstrate whether or not you're the guy that can, get the thing back up and running when no one else could really figure out what was going on? Right? Are you the jack of all trades on the team that even though you're doing programming work, you know how to make a server hum? So if you have these kinds of talents, these things can be accomplishments. You can integrate that information in your resume along with a bullet item that says, yeah, I supported 50 servers in Red Hat environment, that kind of thing, right? It can be very book report-ish, and this takes it out of that category and makes the resume excellent. Okay? I'm not disagreeing with me yet. You can interrupt me anytime. Okay, so what makes a good fit? Okay, so now I'm a hiring manager. I'm trying to determine if you're going to stay on my team for a long time. What happens, I go through all those steps to justify that position and bring you in. That's a lot of risk, right? I'm hoping you're going to work out. So we spend a lot of money training you. We wait for you to ramp up, okay? And then finally you get up to speed, and what can happen, right? What if you don't like the job? What if you hate the environment? What if there was something I could have seen in that phone screening that would have told me there was a counter indicator?
That would have saved a lot of money and time.
Would have, yeah, and an embarrassment. How much is HR going to trust me after this when I say, I really got to have this guy, pay him that extra money, give him that signing bonus, right? They're not going to trust you.
Advertising for the position, hire them, get them in place, train them, and then they leave.
And it happens. All of us have been through it. So what makes a good fit? So I want a good fit. It just doesn't just mean that you can come in and do the job because you have the technical skill. It means you're going to stay with the company and you're going to grow. And I'm going to just reap all these benefits from having found somebody who's a good fit on the team. So role on the team previously demonstrated. So I need to know what role you want, but also if you've already done that, say that on your resume. You know, maybe I'm the lunchbox toting intermediate engineer who loves just pumping out the work and getting it done, and I mentor junior people. Maybe I love to automate things. Sometimes people, they're so anxious just to create a book report, just to talk about what they did. They don't talk about what their motivations are or what their real contribution was to the team. Let's see, growth potential. So if you're looking at, oh, hey, in the next 5 years or so, I would really like to be the boss. I don't, for some people, the technical path they go through, they like to go right up to, senior MTS, senior staff environment, principal engineer, and they stay on the single contributor role. Path. And other people, they want to become bosses. They're kind of tired of doing all the work themselves, and so they realize that they can scale up by handing off tasks to other people, and so they immediately try to carve things off and have junior people do stuff. So there's two different ways that people like to work. And so if you're the secondary kind of person where you like to scale up by creating teams that are responsible to you, then growth potential is very important that way. Qualifications. We'll have another slide on what qualifications are, but your educational background, not just your previous experience. Compensation needs has to match. So, and when I say match, there's always a range. As a hiring manager, sometimes during the phone screening process, I get into a situation where I'm already developing a relationship with the candidate. I'm already that person's advocate, as if they work for me. And you can find out, what do they really need to make? What do they need? What kind of salary do they need to satisfy their needs in life? And then what's their dream salary, right? Those are always two different numbers. Sometimes they're really far apart. There are issues with overpaying people. You can make too much money. Yeah. Anybody who's worked with somebody like that knows, well, anybody in a management position knows what trouble that is. You bring someone on the team that makes, 30% more than everybody else, that person's never getting a raise because you have to bring the whole rest of the team up. So they come on the team and they don't get a raise for 2 years, no matter how hard they work. That can happen. Or they can end up stealing a lot of the raise pool if they're based on percentages. So you try to do the right thing for that person as well as fit them in with the team. And there can be other needs you can negotiate for, or other things that could make you a good fit. If they need somebody that lives 10 minutes from the data center, so you can be the guy that runs there and saves the day, then that makes you a really good fit. If you need a job where you get every other Friday off so you can be with your spouse at home, that's another need. Okay? So here are the qualifications we were talking about. Go on the resume. Your skills, experience, accomplishments, and education. To summarize. Now there's two kinds of qualifications. I like to categorize them two different ways. There's conventional qualifications, which we all recognize, which HR recognizes, and which get, I would say, a disproportionate amount of weight on a resume because it's easy, because it's recognizable, okay? Unconventional qualifications are just as important. And if a hiring manager is trying to fill one of those stubborn positions that they can't ever seem to keep somebody in or they can't seem to fill, unconventional qualifications are your way into your dream job. Okay, but let's start with conventional qualifications. How do we build up qualifications on a resume? Go.
Peanut gallery question.
Sure.
So this is going back a couple slides, but you don't need to move. You had talked about like how long are they going to stay in that position.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm seeing now, and I'm from the generation where people still they tried to stay in one position for a while, but then industry changed and wasn't really an option anymore. What I'm seeing with a lot of younger people, they do not stay long at all because they're just constantly looking for the next promotion, the next exciting thing to do. So I'm asking you and you, if the younger people are asked in an interview, well, how long will you commit to us? What should they be telling them? Because either you've got a good answer or you're going to be lying.
That's a good point. What do you say, Brian?
If I was in an interview and I was asked how long I would be committing to the company, I'd be concerned about the position I was applying for. But I would, because that's a weird question to get in an interview. I don't want to work any place that's going to ask me to commit for a certain period. Military, right? They ask you. But my answer would be, as long as there's a career path for me to continue to grow and learn new things, and I find that I'm contributing value to your organization and you agree, I'd love to be a part of this organization. But, yeah.
We talk about growth potential. It's very important to me. So if I've already figured out from a conversation with you or from what I see on your resume that you might be my next senior guy, and then you might be the guy I send to Singapore to start an office in Singapore, I already have a long-term plan for you that's just possible in the back of my mind. So you're already a plus in that category. And it sounds, but it's only a plus if it's already something that you want to do too, right? So as long as I see the potential for that, that kind of question is not necessary.
We actually kind of talked about that a little bit earlier too. The idea that when we're going to hire someone as a hiring manager, we're hiring to be able to solve a problem. And one of the challenges I was having with someone else in a conversation was, what happens when you fix their problem? What if you can fix it in a month and they've hired you? What's the path beyond that? Hey, what's your plan for me after I solve this for you in a month? Where do you see me in 6 months or a year? Do you have a longer term idea for me? Because I know I'm good enough to be able to get this done, but well,
Okay.
What's your vision?
So give John the microphone. Ask me the question, John. He's the asshole guy going to ask me the question. Ask me the question, John.
So, okay, well, oh, okay. So, if we make the decision to go forward, how long do you plan on staying?
Well, we talked a little bit about my career path. Where do you see me in 12 months?
I see you being at Scale 2021.
Oh, I would love to work for Scale. Okay?
Yeah, thank you for not dropping me.
Okay. Did we do okay? I told you we were going to put him on the spot. He didn't have any idea. Okay, so qualifications, we covered this, right, guys? So where do you find, so you need to prove, your resume needs to prove that you are qualified for a position, okay? Managers need to see it on your resume in order for you to get that call back. Conventional qualifications, here's where they come from, or at least the places I find them most of the time. Okay, first thing that people usually do is they lean over in their current role. Okay, let's say you've always wanted to be a team lead, okay? And right now you're in a senior engineering role. What would be something you would do? You would mentor people, right? You would take on projects so large that junior people have to work for you and they have to do, maybe you'll write the code and they'll do all of the testing. Okay, and maybe some of the debugging work. Maybe they'll take care of the documentation, right? So you're demonstrating in the current role you're in that you're ready for the next role, okay? Casual consulting on 1099 is another way on your resume conventionally to build up, you can go do the work. Do it for a company that's not hiring you permanent, full-time, taking up a seat forever, right? Do it for another company that just needs you for a project, okay? College degree certificate programs are the most expensive, but well accepted way to prove you're conventionally qualified, right? Industry and vendor certifications and training is a little bit faster, also very expensive. These are all conventional. You won't find an HR department in the world that will get scared by any of these qualifications. But now, what if you have a fine arts degree? What if you graduated from college a long, long time ago, like in the era of punch cards? What if you want a re-career in the IT industry, but you don't want to do anything like what you used to do before, okay? Then you're going to maybe need some unconventional qualifications, okay? Open source. You can contribute. You're at the right place to find a way, find a project, find a team that needs you, that you can contribute to in open source. Okay, you find a project to contribute to, you put that link to that repo on your resume, and you talk about it in your interview. There is nothing that takes the risk out of hiring somebody more than if the manager could just click on a link and take a look at your work and see how you interact with the community and how good your documentation is, right? Volunteer work, all right? So you can come work for Scale. You want to learn about network engineering? Go join the NOC, run cables, build equipment with us, speaking at meetups. Okay? You can go to meetup.com and do the few search words. You'll find way more meetups probably than you could possibly attend with birds of a feather. Okay? Online skill builder sites. Okay? We've all seen them. Some of them are free. We had a talk today, earlier today, on free resources for developing a career in open source. And competitions. Depending upon what kind of position you want, a lot of competitions are available right out there in the hallway all weekend. 3 days of CTFs. Every person in that room should be adding something to their resume if this is on the mark for them. Okay, and all these things are great for me as an engineering manager to see on a resume. What about an HR department? Do you think they're going to understand what all those are? So you might have a challenge. So if you're writing a resume and you have a lot of unconventional qualifications, you're extremely qualified, but you're not getting calls back. What do you think we need to do? We tailor the resume more. Explain the qualifications. Explain it in such a way that the HR departments that you're trying to break through or the recruiters you're working with will understand what it means, as if it were conventional. You talk about open source, you can say the work, if you understand the work that you're going to be applying for, you can explain how your open source project is a lot like it. Okay, just give it to them as much as possible. I don't start out doing that with the resume because it's a much bigger job, but if you're not getting calls back, that's what you could do.
So, alluding to the previous session where we were asked a question about cover letters. And I don't know how prevalent cover letters are, to be honest, but I would think that a cover letter would be the good place where you could describe a product or a project that you supported. And then this is a good example where you could use something like GitHub to have your digital resume, or just like an art student can come in with their portfolio. Here's all the work I've done. You could have your equivalent of a portfolio. You don't need to bring your laptop in, but you could tell them, here's a link that shows you the type of things I've worked on.
What do you think? She likes it? Okay, that's another one, the cover letter question. Do we want to go there?
I disagree.
The cover letter question is, do you want to say something? Or, okay. So the cover letter question is another yes. Do I need, is it better to have a cover letter, not better to have? All the answers are yes. Okay, because there are so many different schools of thought on it. I'll give you a little more perspective on it. And I'm going to completely disagree with John, because I think he's completely wrong. Okay, so here's my completely contrasting opinion. If you put it in the cover letter, you made a mistake in your resume. Because what's your resume supposed to do? It's supposed to be customized for that targeted position. You're wasting everybody's time if you write one generic resume and blitz the industry with the same version, especially if it's not generating any calls. Has anybody ever sent out a lot of resumes at one time? It's efficient to do that, right? How many did you send out?
Like 100 in a day once?
Wow.
How many calls did you get back?
Less? Like 5 or 10?
5%, 10%. So what did he just do? He blitzed the industry, all of his best leads, with a version of his resume that's only 5% effective. What if he only sent out 5 resumes, and each one was targeted to the role that he was sending it to? Where he did research on the company, he did research on the people, he did research on the team, he did research on the technology, and he looked deep in his background and his master resume and found things that matched. I think that he would probably have a complementary ratio where he'd have a 95% chance of getting calls back. And he doesn't need the other 95 calls anyway. So.
Also, it occurs to me that, there's a time commitment to doing that research up front to customize a resume, but I would think that that would then give you a lot of your interview questions.
That's exactly what it does. Resume development is a process with a purpose. And that's why I don't recommend anybody just writes a resume and sends it out. And definitely, I don't recommend that you blitz your resume out there. It's just, 75 years ago when people were using typewriters, cover letters bridged the gap. When you had your typewriter, which you borrowed or rented or whatever, you could type 75 of them or something. And then you had to handwrite a cover letter to customize your application for a given role, put it together in an envelope, stamp it, and mail it to prospective. So 2 generations ago, when nobody had word processing or computers, that made sense. Nowadays, unfortunately, because John's wrong, what can happen is your cover letter is going to get separated from your resume anyway. No one's going to see them together. So if your resume is off the mark, you're hurting yourself. And if the cover letter is just repeating it, no one's going to read it. So personally, because I'm trying to disagree with John, I don't read cover letters. I just read resumes. And the most important part of the resume is whatever's at the top, because that's going to tell me right away if I need to read the rest. Okay. So what I hope to have, okay, well, I'm going to table this train of thought. We're going to get to it on a good slide. Okay.
Very quick.
Go ahead.
I promise. And I think it's important to know who, take into account who this resume and maybe cover letter is going to. Big corporation,
Absolutely.
small business. As I can tell you, Long Beach City College, which is a fairly big organization, still doesn't use an applicant tracking system. They look at
Really interesting.
I'm not defending, just and I went to their seminar on how to get a job there, and several people said, we want to see you write in your cover letter that you address the things we put in the job description.
Very good.
So know your audience.
Very good. He's absolutely right. So I'm trying to disagree with him, but it's very hard to. There are some hard, like I said, the answer is yes to these things. If the company you're targeting has this practice, or if you know about this, and recruiters will tell you, you should follow their advice. But I don't write cover letters myself. Okay. So interview rules. You interview them. What do you think that means? I showed you how to look up information about the companies ahead of time, how to sneak a peek at LinkedIn profiles, right? Research the guy you might be replacing or the gal you might be replacing. So you're going to walk in with a set of questions. You want to find out if they're a good match for what you're looking for. Okay? So when you go in an interview, I suggest that you ask as many questions as you get asked. How many people have gone in an interview and not asked a single question themselves? When you get to the end of the interview, they go, you have any questions? And you can't think of a thing to say. Okay, I've done it. That's what I'm asking. It's hypothetical. I've done it. Okay. So the point is that you can actually drive the interview. So how do you think this technique works, John? Does this scare people off?
To interview.
It's where the candidate interviews the hiring manager.
Oh, no, absolutely. I think everyone has to understand that the candidate is not the only one in the room being interviewed. I mean, I have been in interviews where it's like, I don't want to work with you. I mean, I've just had some really bad experiences. And I think the company needs to know who they're putting in the room interviewing them. And that's why, when I told you earlier how structured our interview process becomes, because if people do things in there that might dissuade a candidate, either they ask a question that's inappropriate, illegal, or they just set a tone that the people don't want to come in there.
So how many people like it when their companies send them to training? Just not everybody? Okay. Free training a company going to give you goes on your resume. You don't have to pay for it. Get paid to not work? Okay. Most people, most engineers love free training. Okay. Of those of you who've done that, at your last job, when you sat in the interview, did you ask them, what's your budget for training this year? Did you ask them, how many people got certifications on your team last year? When was the last time, if you're interviewing for a network team, when was the last time somebody got a Juniper certification or a CCNA? You can ask those questions. They're the boss. They're sitting in front of you. Be interesting to know what their answers are. It's not a mystery. Don't leave it to something you figure out 6 months down the road. There isn't a reason to do that. You're finding out if you're a long-term match for them. Okay. Other interview rules. They don't need to know the full story. You need to practice until you have boiled your answers to common questions down very comfortably to being able to say things in about 30 seconds. It's just a rule of thumb. We get nervous and we ramble. and we can't stop ourselves. So if you've practiced, it'll just, when you're developing your resume, you write little blurbs. If you practice a few times, you'd be amazed how much more relaxed you are in the interview. Also, another thing is, if you've been, and this question came up earlier, what if you've been laid off? What if you've had a bad experience in your previous job? And those questions are going to come up. Don't avoid them. Practice the answers. Practice your answer until it comes out neutral. Okay? Here's me nervous. Okay, I got laid off from my previous job because let's say my technology was really old and I was overpaid. Okay, so I got laid off from that previous job, and they asked me, "Why'd you leave your previous
Hey,
company?"
Lori, why'd you leave your previous job?
My boss hated me.
Oh.
I couldn't keep up. All the work they gave me was stuff I didn't want to do. Okay.
Oh, it's very nice to meet you. Good luck in your next job interview.
So, and you know, it sounds really bad. Believe me, I have sat in interviews where people actually blew it that badly, who were probably qualified for the role. I don't know about a good fit, but probably qualified for the role. Because when you're nervous, things come out that are honest, but that's not appropriate. You need to be presenting your best self. So when you've had a negative environment, practice until you have a neutral response. So
I would actually say, because we talked about this in a talk that we did earlier today, one of the things that I try to help people with is that when you're leaving a position or when you've left a position, try to work through all the anger and hatred that came out of that last boss and job. Because if you bring that with you into the next interview and the next job, you're doing yourself and your new opportunity a disservice. Leave all that stuff there, work through it, process it. Don't bring it in the interview.
yeah. So, oh, go ahead.
So let's say, let's say leave a job for stress, but like you generally appreciate good kinds of stress, like a lot of work that is kind of in the field that you're looking for. I guess what would your kind of response?
What did you like about that? This is a hypothetical job. We're not going to pinpoint any of his previous employers. What did you like about that job?
So
Name one thing.
whenever I was actually writing code, it was perfectly enjoyable.
Oh, that was the most challenging coding I've ever had. I just want to do more of it.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
There's your neutral answer.
Yeah.
Okay.
You find the happy path, right?
Yeah.
Find the thing that you enjoyed that actually drove you to seek a job just like it, but working in another company for another boss with a different direction, right?
Okay.
What is the great thing that you're looking forward to being able to do in the new place that you really enjoyed in the last place?
Okay. And this slide is actually the heart. Okay. This is time to ask your tough questions. This is the heart of mistakes people make during interviews. Okay.
We got one right here, Lori.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay, so you're in the interview, and the interviewer asks you a question, something you've never done before, but you gave an honest answer, and you say, I don't, to be honest, I really never did that, but they said that counted against you. How do you deal with it?
So that's one of those yes answers. There are some people that just, they're looking for reasons to eliminate you, and they'll keep, and so I'll tell you as a technical manager, a technical interviewer, I'm going to keep answering questions until you say I don't know. You are not going to walk out of an interview with me thinking you're the smartest guy in the world. Because if I can't ask you questions, if I can't find the end of your technical limit, I'm going to call in my senior guy, and he's going to start asking questions, or she's going to start asking questions, until we finally get to the point where you're saying, I've never done that before. I have no idea. I'd have to Google that. Where's Stack Overflow when you need it? Okay, that's our job, is to find out where the edges are, how far your experience and your knowledge goes right now. So that's a benign explanation. There is not a benign, there's an asshole explanation, and that is I like to feel smart. And I'm going to ask questions in a way that make you feel dumb. And there are people that do this. I have worked with people like
The
this.
answer I was going to say is that this isn't a place you want to work, right? You want to find a place that's going to go, well, how do you handle something when you've never done it before? I would want to know how you get started when you don't know a thing. Well, I used to say in interviews, I still say it now, if you give me an hour in a browser, I can figure out anything I've never done before. I'm a smart girl. I can do this, right?
Yeah. So the answer is that when you don't know something, you say you don't know, and here's what I'm going to do. Because they just want to know how you work. And if they want to know, they either want to know what the extent of your current knowledge is, or they want to know how you work when you don't know something, whether you get flabbergasted, where you get upset if you're in unfamiliar territory, and then there are less benign reasons to be doing that.
Real quick, and also since we spoke previously, and I know you were in the Army, right? I mean, the military is based on giving you situations you've never encountered before to figure it out, right? So I would have confidence in whatever they ask you. I've never done it, but I can, because that was probably every day in the Army for you. Well, here's a new experience.
Okay, so to keep going further through the meat of this, I'd like you to practice until you avoid apologies. If you have issues, RaiseMe works a lot with people that are re-careering, people that are moving from one career path and making a turn to another, or in some cases they're what I call restarts, people who had successful careers and then they stopped for whatever reason, to go back to school, to live outside the country, to write a book, or to raise children. And they've been out of the technology field for a long time, long enough that things changed when they were gone. Okay, these are very special circumstances. And what happens with people like this is they walk into interviews, and I only learned this by working on RaiseMe here, they walk into interviews apologizing. So, and this really, this will definitely hurt your chances to prove that you're a good fit for a role. Okay, if you have something that you feel is a weakness, you need to do two things. You need to build up your conventional or unconventional qualifications until you find another way to prove you're qualified, besides what they're looking. So if they say they want a 4-year college degree and you don't have one, what can you offer instead? Experience. Targeted experience that sounds like something that will resonate with them, right? They don't want to know that you worked at a hair parlor for 6 years, right? So you put that on your resume. You make sure you answer that job posting item by saying, I have so many years of experience doing customer support in a dynamic environment, okay? Something like that, right? So you practice until you build up your qualifications, and then you practice talking about your qualifications until the pride comes out. Okay? I don't have that bachelor's degree, but I've done all these things, and I'm a senior on my team. And there's 3 people working for me that have college degrees. And we all, we're all peers, we're doing fine. So you just don't let it sneak out when you're nervous and when you're under the gun. The way you keep that from happening is you have it on the tip of your tongue. Okay, and here's another thing that people come to us for help with. What if you're stuck? So that process we showed that was serial about, you start with the resumes, and then you get the call back, and then you get the interview, and then you negotiate, and then you get an offer. There are people that get all the way through that, and they either never get a call back about negotiating, or they never get the offer, over and over again. Is there anybody here that's been through that? Okay, I know how to, we know what questions to talk about how to unstick it, okay? And I'll give you one example that would resonate with someone my age. So when you have white hair and you go into a job interview, there is one subject you should not be talking about. Don't talk about your boat. Don't talk about your Tahitian vacation. Don't talk about how much you miss the sand and the surf. Don't make it sound like you are 10 seconds away from retirement, okay? Because you're pressing on people's biases, okay? That's if you have gray hair. What if you're a mom? You're a restart. You've been out of the workforce for a couple of years. Sitting in the job interview, you're not obliged to answer questions about your children, but it's on your mind. You're going back to work for the first time. What are you not going to talk about? How much you miss your kids? Don't show them pictures of the kids. Oh, and I dropped her off at daycare this morning and she was crying. I mean, when people get nervous, these things come up. Okay? Don't press on their biases. Of course, the bias there with any new parent is they're afraid you're going to quit, or you're going to have another baby right away, or your focus won't be on the job, right? Talk about those things after you're hired. You'd be best friends. Take them out on your boat fishing every weekend if you want. Not in the interview process. In the interview process, you're going to avoid the biases. You're going to stay neutral and put your best self forward.
True story that somebody opened up the interview by sharing that their cat had died that morning. And I'm a big animal lover.
Okay.
Not the time to talk about it.
Okay. All right. I haven't heard that one before, John. So, yes, and in the interview, to distinguish the difference between interviewing and negotiating, in the interview you're getting information. You're asking questions, taking notes, verifying the things that you've read about the company that are important to you. Okay, trying to find out, am I going to get that training? Are they going to send me to scale? Can I do my volunteer work? Can I keep my intellectual property? All the things that matter, you're going to be asking about, okay? What you care about as far as salary, which and other sensitive subjects, is it in the right range? Okay, if you want to be able to telecommute, about, one day every week or one day every 2 weeks, then keep that in mind. Is it going to be every other Thursday from 3 to midnight? No, that's a little bit too detailed. Keep it to what your general needs are, and so you'll have a salary range in mind, and they will. It doesn't need to be any more specific than that. Okay. So here are some of the things in my hiring manager talk that I tell them to discuss with potential candidates. To garner the information to find out what the potential candidates have to offer. Just reminders. If you have a team that's under a lot of pressure, like an operations team that's handling outages all the time, this is very important. Is this person the kind of person that gets really flustered? I've actually been in interviews where we made candidates cry because we started asking questions. Well, we had this outage event. I used to work for a really big internet service provider, outage event. We would present to them. Here's the situations we've had. There have been outages. Every technical support call costs us $7, tens of thousands of dollars of profit being flushed here and there. It just, when you present them with these situations, they pick up on the anxiety, and then you see that this is generalities in ranges, but you don't negotiate. If the range doesn't match, you're in the wrong seat. You should have found that out in the job phone screening.
Okay, usually on the interview process, the interviewer asks you what you expect, but in the other hand, you don't know what's their range. Why don't the interviewer tell what's their range on the phone call?
Because right. I'll answer the question. Because they lose the upper hand in negotiating. The first person that names the number is actually at a disadvantage in negotiating.
So what about if you say something that's like BS, like $5 or something, or $1?
You can tell them, too bad, I was really hoping for 10. I guess I'll move on to my next interview. I don't know. I would make a joke out of it. I wouldn't.
Get you to see a number, right? And so you just say like.
So when you say they, so you have to build a little, because this doesn't sound typical,
Yeah, so
right?
the hiring manager is trying to get you to say, like, so what's your idea of, a potential salary? And, they're not willing to disclose, what they're willing to pay. So you say something like $1, $5 or something,
So I'm sure that it's possible. That's not a good practice. That's not the way I teach hiring managers to do interviews. The interview is really not the place to negotiate. You should be determining if there's a match. Okay? And it can happen, I'm sure, because I've seen just about everything terrible happening in interviews that can happen, and I work with those managers. But in a good world, it won't, which is why I say maybe your best option is just to play it off as a joke and get serious about other things. Ask them questions. Fill the space with things that are of concern to you. And if they ask you for a specific number, you say, well, I'm interested between 70 and 95, but it really depends on everything else. Am I going to get to telecommute? Okay. Are you going to pay for my education? Okay. So make it clear that your career decision is not just a number. There are several things. We showed that whole list of things that are just as important as salary for your long-term happiness. If all you have is one number, in 12 months when everybody else has a raise, how's that number going to look? Well, you fought hard and you got this massive number, and then now everybody else on the team is going to have to catch up, right? It just creates issues further on. It can't only be about the salary. Okay? So I didn't answer your question, but okay. Managers, illegal interview. Okay, so no managers. We got one manager in the room. So there you go. Don't ask these questions. As of last year, it got even harder in California to behave yourself. You don't need any of this information to determine if a candidate is qualified, and you have no business asking this information to determine how much you want to offer.
Including previous salary.
Including previous salary. Right. That's new. Relatively new. And then also, if you're hiring for European countries, they're even stricter. Okay. Recruiting. Okay, so there's no managers in the room, so we got a whole bunch that we can skip. Okay. So talking about recruiting, all these considerations for diverse teams, and negotiations. Okay, now also it didn't sound like we had a lot of people in a negotiating situation, but I want to leave you with some skills or with some understanding of what happens. So I'll go through it a little bit quick. How are we doing on time?
It is 4:30.
It is 4:30.
It is
Are we done at 4:30?
I
Okay.
believe we may be done at 4:30.
Okay.
Although there's some people who look like they might want some information, so we can
Yeah.
run along.
Okay, so we got really good questions on interviewing, and that's what we really needed to do. But we could see. Okay, so never lose situational awareness. Make sure you're finished the interview process. Follow up with phone calls. Even send them an updated resume if you need to. And don't start negotiating until you really know how badly you want the job. And until they know how good of a match you are. Okay? Salary isn't everything. This is a repeat of what we said before. All these things are important to whether you're a good long-term match for a company. Equally important to me. Now, if you're trying to fix a problem, that's different. If you've had to commute, if you live out in the sticks and you've had to commute a long, long way, and you say, I'm willing to give it all up for a telecommute job, then you can make that your priority. For years and years and years, the first 12 years I worked in the aerospace industry, and my salary was kept very low because I didn't have a college degree, and it was a time when our raises were very tiny. And I reached a point where I was very tired of apologizing for my salary, and I left for the highest bidder. So I needed to fix a problem, and that gave it priority over other things. Okay? But I let that situation happen. Now I understand. You've got to caretake your career. You've got to work that job with your manager when you're there and not wait for it to get out of hand. Okay? And this is a sample of a career progression where somebody started out as a senior system administrator, and he wanted to become a principal engineer. So he left for a smaller company that would appreciate his skills, got that title, and then he left again to become a director of operations, and then director of DevOps, senior director. So we can see this progression of his career. Now, what does everybody think is going to be up here? Do we think he's a loser? That he can't get a promotion in place? Or CTO? Right. So he found something in each position to offer his next employer that was special enough they were willing to bump him up a little bit. Now, is this person thinking about salary? What's this person emphasizing in his career progression with each job? Responsibility, title. He went from large operation to small operation to large operation, to larger operation, right? And so what this person is doing is he's moving up a ladder. You can see this person is emphasizing his roles. Okay, and this is a real person used with his permission. This is LinkedIn profile. Okay, and if you're in the same spot where you want to be CTO someday, look at the progressions that CTOs have had. Okay, we've seen this. This is not a separate clinic, but the better the fit you are, the closer you'll get offered the top of the salary range. Makes perfect sense, right? If they're looking for a guy that has done exactly the thing you did at a competitor at their last job, they should offer you top dollar because you're going to come up to speed faster, you're less of a risk, you're going to bring solutions in with you. So you're worth more money, right? Makes sense. Okay. And we've talked about reborns and restarts. There are a lot of advantages to managers to hire people that are recurring from other industries. That can be you. You just need to put the information on your resume. And we don't have anybody, we only had one person with an offer on the table, so total compensation packages, we won't spend time on that. But that's all available, RaiseMe content. So you can catch me at another conference, or at a specific clinic, or in one-on-ones. Okay? And contracts, and here's the things we can negotiate, things like that. So, yes, we're done? Thank you. Yeah, and this is my room, so we're good. So yeah, one last thing is that I get asked a lot is that should you go out and seek another offer in order to force your current leadership to either give you a raise or a promotion or some other opportunity? And there's good and bad in that. And so the guidance that I give is yes, there are oftentimes what a manager needs is a little bit of help, leverage with their own HR department. It can be done wrong, which can leave issues for you in the long run. But on the other hand, if you're in an environment that isn't a good long-term fit for you, that doesn't have a long-term path like that for you, where you're running into obstacles like that, then you really need to think about whether that one-time fix, that one-time 10% raise, that one-time promotion is going to correct the whole environment for you that's generated this problem. Okay, and that's what I have. For those of you that missed, we had quite a turnover here. For those of you who missed the beginning, this RaiseMe is an all-volunteer effort. Nobody's paid. We're all industry professionals that just want to help people. We're different from job fairs. We're not trying to, there are recruiters that work with us that do have roles, but we're not trying to sell you on changing out your jobs. We're trying to help you maximize your career no matter what your situation is. We offer just as much help to hiring managers as we do to candidates. Okay, and RaiseMe is what we're called. Salute is the arm of RaiseMe. That's specifically for veterans recareering into the civilian world. ShellCon is the name of the information security conference that we came out of. I co-founded that conference 3.5 years ago with 2 other folks, and we're in San Pedro every year in October. Thank you to Bryna. Thank you to John for being our victims today. Aren't they good sports?